virgin's exhortation to her daughter, complaining about how few her friends are, and about how Christ speaks to the bride and describes his sacred words as flowers, and explains who the people are in whom such words are to bear fruit. Chapter 24, from Book 2 of Prophecies and Revelations by Saint Bridget of Sweden. Mary was speaking. Imagine a large army somewhere, and a person walking alongside it, heavily weighed down, carrying a great load on his back and in his arms. With his eyes full of tears, he might look at the army to see if there should be someone to have compassion on him and relieve his burden. That is the way I felt. From the birth of my son until his death, my life was full of tribulation. I carried a heavy load on my back, and I persevered steadfastly in God's work and patiently bore everything that happened to me. I endured carrying a most heavy load in my arms, in the sense that I suffered more sorrow of heart and tribulation than any creature. My eyes were full of tears when I contemplated the places in my son's body destined for the nails, as well as his future passion, and when I saw all the prophecies I had heard foretold by the prophets being fulfilled in him. And now I look around at everyone who is in the world to see if there happens to be some who might have compassion on me, and be mindful of my sorrow. But I find very few who think about my sorrow and tribulation. This is why, my daughter, although I am forgotten and neglected by many people, you must not forget me. Look at my struggles, and imitate them as far as you can. Contemplate my sorrow and tears, and be sorry that the friends of God are so few. Stand firm. Look, my son is coming. He came at once and said, I who am speaking with you am your God and Lord. My words are like the flowers of a fine tree. Although all the flowers spring up from the tree's one root, not all of them come to fruition. My words are like flowers that spring up from the root of divine charity. Many people take them, but they do not bear fruit in all of them, nor reach maturity in them all. Some people take them and keep them for a time, but later reject them, for they are ungrateful to my Spirit. Some take and keep them, for they are full of love, and the fruit of devotion and holy conduct is produced in them. You, therefore, my bride, who are mine by divine right, must have 3 houses. In the first, there should be the necessary nourishment to enter the body. In the second, the clothes that clothe the body on the outside. In the third, the tools necessary for use in the house. In the first, there should be 3 things. First, bread, then drink, and third, meats. In the second house, there should be 3 things. First, linen clothing, then woolen, then the kind made by silkworms. In the third house, there should also be 3 things. First, tools and vessels to be filled with liquids. Second, living instruments, such as horses and asses and the like, by which bodies can be conveyed. And third, instruments that are moved by living beings. Christ's advice to the bride about the provisions in the 3 houses, and about how bread stands for a good will, drink for holy forethought, and meats for divine wisdom, and about how there is no divine wisdom in erudition, but only in the heart and in a good life. Chapter 25. I, who am speaking with you, am the Creator of all things, created by none. There was nothing before me, and there can be nothing after me, since I always was and always am. I am the Lord, whose power none can withstand, and from whom all power and sovereignty come. I speak to you as a man speaks to his wife. My wife, we should have 3 houses. In one of them there should be bread and drink and meats. But you might ask, what does this bread mean? Do I mean the bread that is on the altar? This is indeed bread, prior to the words, "This is my body." But, once the words have been spoken, it is not bread but the body that I took from the Virgin, and that was truly crucified on the cross. But here I do not mean that bread. The bread that we should store in our house is a good and sincere will. Physical bread, if it is pure and clean, has two good effects. First, it fortifies and gives strength to all the veins and arteries and muscles. Second, it absorbs any inner impurity, bringing it along for removal as it goes out, and so the person is cleansed. In this way, a pure will gives strength. If a person wishes for nothing but the things of God, works for nothing but the glory of God, desires with every desire to leave the world and to be with God, this intention strengthens him in goodness, increases his love for God, makes the world loathsome to him, fortifies his patience, and reinforces his hope of inheriting glory to the extent that he cheerfully embraces everything that happens to him. In the second place, a good will removes every impurity. What is the impurity harmful to the soul if not pride, greed, and lust? However, when the impurity of pride or of some other vice enters the mind, it will leave, provided the person reasons in the following way. Pride is meaningless, since it is not the recipient who should be praised for goods given him, but the giver. Greed is meaningless, since all the things of earth will be left behind. Lust is nothing but filth. Therefore, I do not desire these things, but want to follow the will of my God, whose reward will never come to an end, whose good gifts never grow old. Then every temptation to pride or greed will leave him, and he will persevere in his good intention of doing good. The drink we should have in our houses is holy forethought about everything to be done. Physical drink has two effects. First, it aids good digestion. When a person proposes to do something good, and, before doing it, considers to himself and turns carefully over in his mind what glory will come out of it for God, what benefit is it to his neighbor, what advantage to his soul, and does not want to do it unless he judges there be some divine usefulness in his work, then that proposed work will turn out well, or be, so to speak, well digested. Then, if any indiscretion occurs in the work he is doing, it is quickly detected. If anything is wrong, it is quickly corrected, and his work will be upright and rational and edifying for others. A person who does not show holy forethought in his work, and does not seek benefit to souls or the glory of God, even if his work turns out well for a time, nevertheless it will come to nothing in the end. In the second place, drink quenches thirst. What kind of thirst is worse than the sin of base greed and anger? If a person thinks beforehand what usefulness will come of it, how wretchedly it will end, what reward there will be if he makes resistance, then that base thirst is soon quenched through God's grace. Zealous love for God and good desires fill him, and joy arises because he has not done what came into his mind. He will examine the occasion, and how he can avoid in the future those things by which he was almost tripped up. Had he not had forethought, and he will be more careful in the future about avoiding such things. My bride, this is the drink that should be stored in our pantry. Third, there should also be meats there. These have two effects. First, they taste better in the mouth and are better for the body than just bread alone. Second, they make for tenderer skin and better blood than if there were only bread and drink. Spiritual meat has a like effect. What do these meats symbolize? Divine wisdom, of course. Wisdom tastes very good to a person who has a good will and wants nothing but what God wants. Showing holy forethought doing nothing until he knows it to be for God's glory. Now, you might ask, what is divine wisdom? For many people are simple and only know one prayer, the Our Father, and not even that correctly. Others are very erudite and have wide knowledge. Is this divine wisdom? By no means. Divine wisdom is not precisely to be found in erudition, but in the heart and a good life. That person is wise who reflects carefully on the path toward death and how he will die, and on his judgment after death. That person has the meats of wisdom and the taste of a good will and holy forethought, who detaches himself from the vanity and superfluities of the world, and contents himself with the bare necessities, and struggles in the love of God according to his abilities. When a person reflects on his death and on his nakedness at death, when a person examines God's terrible court of judgment, where nothing is hidden and nothing is remitted without a punishment, when he also reflects on the instability and vanity of the world, will he not then rejoice and sweetly savor in his heart the surrender of his will to God, together with his abstinence from sin? Is it not his body strengthened and his blood improved? That is not every weakness of his soul, such as sloth and moral dissolution, driven away, and the blood of divine love rejuvenated? This is because he reasons rightly that an eternal good is to be loved rather than a perishable one. Therefore, divine wisdom is not precisely to be found in erudition, but in good works, since many are wise in a worldly way, and after their own desires, but altogether foolish with regard to God's will and commandments, and the disciplining of their body. Such people are not wise, but foolish and blind, for they understand perishable things that are useful for the moment, but they despise and forget the things of eternity. Others are foolish with regard to worldly delights and reputation, but wise in considering the things that are of God, and they are fervent in his service. Such people are truly wise, for they savor the precepts and will of God. They have truly been enlightened, and keep their eyes open, in that they are always considering in what way they may reach the true life and light. Others, however, walk in darkness, and it seems to them more delightful to be in darkness than to inquire about the way by which they might come to the light. Therefore, my bride, let us store up these 3 things in our houses, namely, a good will, holy forethought, and divine wisdom. These are the things that give us reason to rejoice. Although I speak my advice to you, by you I mean all my chosen ones in the world, since the righteous soul is my bride, for I am her Creator and Redeemer. Welcome to the Virgo Potens YouTube channel. If you enjoy this video, give it a like. I also invite you to subscribe to this channel so that you won't miss new content. Please prayerfully consider supporting my work by becoming a patron of Virgo Potens on Patreon and/or by buying one of my books. My ebooks are available on Amazon as well as on the Apple Bookstore. For those who prefer a physical copy rather than an ebook, my book, Spiritual Warfare, Know Thy Enemy, is also available as a paperback on Amazon. If you are interested in making a one-time contribution, I suggest that you do so by simply buying one of my books. I am thankful for your support. Links to Patreon and to my books will be posted in the comments section of this video. The continuation of this work isn't possible without you. Lastly, and most importantly, please pray for me. May the Virgin Most Powerful guide and protect you.